So Nicki Minaj is coming to Mawazine.
So many thoughts. Public reactions were so mixed. So many people were so excited. She's probably the most famous slash well-known artist that was announced in this year's lineup, which is a week long. So it's quite a few, but she was actually the only artist they teased.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people were very excited, but
You know,
also
the
very
announcement on Instagram has over 71K likes
I feel like that's a very just
with hundreds of positive comments.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people were so happy because I feel like leading up to that Minaj announcement, there was a lot of disappointment among fans. I mean, there weren't any names that garnered as much attention as some of the previous editions. So
she's the headliner.
She's definitely the headliner.
Like, it's very obvious.
It's a Minaj Mawazine this year.
I think it's very interesting also considering the news cycle lately. I mean, with everything that has been going on with a certain miniskirt. Nicki Minaj in the Mawazine roster this year is a very interesting choice.
Of course. I mean, she's one of the most controversial artists for her fashion choices.
Even in the US.
Even in the US, even in parts of Western Europe. I mean, she always leaves a trail of controversy and headlines behind every single one of her shows. It was a very interesting choice to have her come. Of course, I'm sure it was planned way before the little miniskirt YouTube controversy. But yeah, I mean, it definitely does make Moroccans wonder about what exactly is and isn't okay for us as a homogenous society.
Yeah, a lot of people are very confused. You can tell in reactions on social media, even though the announcement garnered a lot of positive reactions, a lot of people are wondering, how does this make sense? They're very confused. How can somebody who dresses as controversially as Nicki Minaj does be okay, but a Moroccan girl in a YouTube video with somewhat of a really short skirt garnered calls for boycott, for public intervention, for authorities to intervene, to the point where an investigation was eventually launched, and the girl can't leave Morocco because of the investigation. How can we reconciliate both of these things?
I feel like a very simple way to look at it, if we're being frank, is that we as a society, we give passes to A, famous people, and B, foreigners.
And if you're both,
you've just hit the jackpot.
It's the jackpot.
So, even in like highly touristic cities, you can see that there is a certain level of leniency or like nonchalance for white people's outfits or tourists' way of being, which would have never been okay if it was a Moroccan. So there's that, but there's also this sort of illicit understanding that these people are artists and they're not Moroccan. Like, rules don't necessarily apply.
To a certain extent.
Of course. I mean, not to everyone. Not everyone shares this sentiment.
2010, Elton John, 2013, Jessie J, 2015, Jennifer Lopez. All of them they received a lot of backlash just because of the way they dress. For Elton John, it was because of his sexuality. And Jennifer Lopez was even sued for offense to public decency.
Yeah,
which is crazy.
I feel like every single year, one of the big headlining Mawazine artists is a talking point for the news cycle, for people on social media. I mean, it will never end. But I also think that after what is it, like a 5-year hiatus for Mawazine, 4 or 5 year hiatus since COVID, people have kind of forgotten a little bit how usually controversial Mawazine is, or like how it constantly creates this sort of popular discourse on social media and so on, that this Nicki Minaj was probably like
a wake-up call,
a little reminder of what Mawazine lineup announcements are like. And it doesn't really veer too much into the extraordinary, to be honest. I'm not shocked by the reactions that we see on social media, but also a lot of people are very happy. So
Mm-hmm.
there was an early bird ticket sale, and they're pretty much sold
Sold
out
out, yeah.
within the 48 hours. So
Yeah,
that was, I mean, the money speaks for itself.
absolutely. But we're also noticing calls to not go to the festival, whether it's because of Nicki Minaj, because of the current economic and living condition situation, or because of the conflict in Gaza. People are calling for the festival's boycott, even. And I feel like this is highlighting a disconnect in Moroccan society. Like, we have on one side hyper modern young people who are super excited for Nicki Minaj, barbs in Morocco that are going crazy over her announcement. But on the other side, somewhat hyper conservative people who are calling for her boycott or are very worried about the aftermath of her show in Morocco, depending on how it actually goes, how she actually presents herself. What do you think is the reason behind this disconnect that we can see?
I don't think there is a specific reason behind it that kind of like splits opinions, but I think it will. Mawazine is the summer event in this
Mhm.
country. It has not been organized since 2019. There was a whole generation that kind of missed out on some of their Mawazine going years that couldn't.
Yeah.
And now it's finally back. But it is back in extremely grim and difficult
Mhm.
circumstances, not just for Morocco, but for the world. I mean, we are all just appalled at what we see every day on social media because of what's going on in Gaza. We are all complaining of a rising cost of living. I
Mhm.
mean, these are realities. And because Moazine is such a big deal, people know that a lot of attention will be on the festival. And so they're trying to raise awareness about issues that they care about,
Mhm.
be it diplomacy, be it the economy, through this festival. I don't think anyone is against the festival itself, except for a small minority
Yeah.
of, should I say, religious conservatives,
Which has
but
always been present.
which they will
Yeah.
protest any form of
Yeah.
arts, honestly, any
Yeah.
form of spectacle or festival, concerts,
And not
new
just, I feel
music.
like any form of quote unquote modern art.
Yeah, I wouldn't say modern. I would just say like young,
Exactly.
like
Yeah,
any
exactly.
younger generation outputs that has sort of an artistic merit to it,
Mhm.
they will criticize. And why? Because it's unconventional, not
Exactly.
necessarily because it's bad for the
We can
youth.
see it via Mawazin. We can see it on YouTube content. We can also see it in music,
Of
in rap
course,
music. Rap music is a
especially.
very big target for protests and for denouncing that type of young output. Um, it's very interesting to me, this whole offense to public decency debate, because how can we define public decency? I mean, the article in the law that actually defines it, Article 483, it means that anyone who, by their state of voluntary nudity or by the obscenity of their gestures or actions, commits a public offense to decency. But who draws the line? Where do we draw the line at what is offensive or not? I feel like it's a very subjective and vague way of judging these actions or these artistic input.
I feel like with this offense, you will be in trouble if you were almost caught by the wrong people or
Mhm.
people that you don't necessarily have the same beliefs and
Or
values as.
background, yeah.
If they see you and they interpret some of what you said or did as a danger or a threat or problematic, even,
Mhm.
they can then easily go up to authorities and lodge an official complaint, and that's when you'll be in trouble.
That's
I mean, I would
exactly what
like
happened with the YouTube speed dating show.
exactly. I
The
mean,
first couple of episodes did get some public outcry and reactions and stuff, but it was contained. It was contained to a certain audience. But with the speed dating video, it broke containment, it became viral, and it reached audiences that weren't really targeted in the beginning.
I mean, the whole idea behind the difference in reaction to both episodes, or even both concepts, I would say, was because the people who were first outraged by the first episode were outraged because of the mentalities
They
of
were
the
just
youth.
cringing.
Yeah,
They were
but like
experiencing
also
cringe.
but even the people who are not necessarily the show's target audience, they were outraged by the state of the youth. If I want to, like they
the
were
oldest
very
time generational
divide.
gap and divide, yeah.
Exactly. But I feel like with the second episode, with the speed dating episode, it turned into like
a societal issue, a
yes,
public opinion issue.
It was a morality issue.
Exactly.
It wasn't just a generational difference, or say
it wasn't just like, oh, look at the youth and what the youth are doing
and,
or thinking.
or how they speak or what language they speak.
This is going to influence our society in a
this
bad
is not
way.
Okay.
Yeah.
But also, most importantly, it's like that episode was published right after Ramadan.
Oh yeah. They knew what they were doing. They knew what they were doing.
They had like an audience that was just like, that just spent like a whole month
fasting and being religious.
Exactly, like practicing a religion that focuses on restraint and modesty. And then that happened. So I feel like it was a little shocking for most people. I feel like that's where a lot of the anger was coming from. Yeah. And also,
in addition to the miniskirt.
In addition, of course, I mean, the star of the show. We should not
forget about the miniskirt.
The star of the show was the miniskirt. But what I think was different with this episode is the fact that, you know, how the young woman on the video is not just Moroccan, right? I mean, she grew up abroad and all of those things. And usually, Moroccans do kind of like, do you remember we talked about the leeway that they give to, they also give it to Moroccans living abroad, but it wasn't the case this time.
This time she was not benefiting from the foreigner privilege in Morocco.
Exactly, which was so sad because I don't think she came out and talked about this. I don't think she expected it to go the way it did. And I don't know, it was just like a very unfortunate situation for everyone involved.
And I feel like Moroccans are learning that things that happen in the digital sphere online can be actually taken to court. You can lodge a complaint about things that happen online and authorities will launch an investigation.
Yeah, internet is real life.
Exactly. Back in the day, even though there were certain controversies that would happen, it would rarely go on to the legal
judicial
system
part of it. Yeah.
Part of it, exactly. I mean, I remember في هالملحة وسكر وما بغتش تموت.
I love that movie.
That movie is from 1999. It's as old as I am right now. When it first came out, there was no public outcry, no outrage, even though I remember it has a scene where a character kisses another character on the lips in a hospital room. It was fine. But then in 2015, there was a rerun on national television, and I found so many articles. I remember the outrage and the discourse that was happening around that time, especially online, on social media. Back in 1999, there was no social media. If people were actually outraged, it was contained. You would discuss it with your family, with your friends, and then you would move on. But now social media is making things, it's amplifying things. It's making things like reach this dimension that wasn't there.
Of course.
Before.
I mean, it's not even about outrage. Some people could have never seen that movie, right? Some people don't have TVs, but they're just going to hear, but they do have Instagram. They do have Facebook. They do have WhatsApp. They do have TikTok.
I know a lot of people who were not even interested in the whole YouTube speed dating thing, that they wouldn't have seen that in a million years on their own. But because, like you said, we have Instagram, we have Twitter, we have Facebook, discourse can start very, very easily on these platforms, and you find yourself subjected to content that you wouldn't have given any attention to under normal circumstances.
And also the people who detail their outrage on social media could also feed an outrage that would not have occurred in someone in the first place.
No, this is really funny because we know now that social media platforms are governed by algorithms that do this on purpose.
Mhm.
Ever since, like, social media in the beginning and the internet in general was about connection, community, reaching out to people with similar interests, and you would create little communities,
Finding
little
communities,
forums,
yeah.
little niche interests. So you would keep up with your friends or your online friends, your acquaintances. Your timeline was just a bunch of people updating their pictures, their status.
It was more personal.
It was very personal. But then I want to say around 2012, 2013,
Mhm.
likes and shares and comments and engagement became a big deal.
Yeah, it was the rise of attention economy, and
Exactly.
anything that would get anyone's attention for more than 5 seconds
Mhm.
was worth gold.
And
I feel
usually
like
what gets people's attentions for more than 5
outrage,
seconds.
anger,
Exactly. So you are
controversy.
how many times would you be scrolling down your social media of choice and you come across a post, a video, a photo that you don't even follow the page or the
Mhm,
person who
mhm.
posted that, but the second you see it, you feel this rage inside of
Mhm.
you and you are compelled to comment and get into fights and prop up that engagement
Yeah.
for the platform to sell to advertisers.
But also to the posters themselves. I
Mhm.
mean, a lot of people are doing this. We have seen an insane rise in the amount of gossip Instagram pages
yeah.
and TikTok pages. I
Mhm.
mean, not to name names, but some people are
We all
even
know.
have already like built up careers, fully fledged influencer careers on the backs of celebrity gossip.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, that it alone should show you that outrage is on social media, and especially in Morocco, is extremely
It's
manufactured.
fabricated.
It's curated.
Yeah.
It is cherry picked in order to make you react and to. I feel like Hamza Mon Bebe was such a revelation.
It was a catalyst.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like it was such a revelation to people who then realized that this is not okay. Because I feel like bullying online is so normalized,
Mhm.
and outing people, their secrets, and
Exposing people, canceling them.
Exactly. Like, I feel like this is so normalized on socials that sometimes we forget that it's still a cyber crime.
Mhm.
It's still not okay.
Someone will lodge a complaint.
If someone lodges a complaint, you could face jail time,
Yeah.
you could be in prison. And we've seen this with some very notable names going to prison over that account, but also over others.
Mhm.
And I feel like that alone should like taught our society that, oh, if I see something online that I don't like or that I deem to be hurtful or problematic,
Mhm.
I can easily go and complain to
It was the
authorities.
catalyst for this trend that we're noticing right now of people online being highly litigious and seeing something that they don't like or that they think is an offense to public decency
Mhm.
and starting this whole discourse about it and going to to authorities, lodging a complaint, having an investigation being launched.
Mhm.
It started there.
Yes, exactly. And authorities are definitely keeping up
Mhm.
because, they've launched a couple platforms where you can report
I feel like
and lodge
they have
complaints.
to because
Yeah, because there's a huge demand.
exactly.
Like just this week, there was a new platform that was launched,
Mhm.
and it was specialized in complaining about specifically cybercrimes.
Yeah.
So, things like that are also making it easier, making citizens' access to authorities a whole lot easier.
Mhm.
But I feel like this also raises a question of, okay, but what is worth you lodging a complaint? And what is you just being
Cringed. You're just cringing at something and
cringed, or it's like a personal
Triggered.
freedom kind of
Yeah.
situation,
Yeah.
right? Like what is the decisive factor that tells you that, oh no, you are well within your right to complain about this, or you actually have no say. Like this is this person's life. Like you cannot.
This is a very interesting point that you bring up because Moroccans haven't always been in each other's business as much as we see right now with the internet. there wasn't always, like I said, again, I go back to the example of the movie that I mentioned earlier. If outrage exists, it's usually contained to real life, to communities, to families, to friends. But now with the internet, it's just anything can become a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Anything can trigger you. And if you are triggered, then you are well within your right to lodge a complaint.
Yeah. And then it's up to authorities to decide whether it's a valid complaint or not.
Then an investigation is opened and evidence is considered, and it's up to authorities at that point. But what's really funny to me in all of this is that when was the last time you heard someone speak about Kaweris and the whole YouTube speed dating problem?
It's been a minute.
Right?
It's been a minute. It's definitely been a minute.
It's been in the news cycle for like 1 week, 2 weeks at the max, and then it's
but
I don't see people talking about it online
anymore. The poor lady is still suffering the consequences of that video.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the worst part about it.
That's my point.
But
I feel like the news cycle is so quick. Like, people get outraged, they talk about something, there's discourse for a week or two, and then we move on to the next big thing. After that, like, we forget about it, we just move on with our lives. But the people that were involved, they suffer the consequences.
Exactly.
We've seen it also with that rap song, Kubi Ete.
Oh, that's that.
That was also a I mean, that rapper, both of them, they're not really mainstream. They have a career, they've been rapping for a very long time, but they are very niche. If you're into rap music, if you're into a certain type of rap music, you might know them.
A certain type of rap music.
You might know them, but not the general public. But with that song, they hit the jackpot with that song because it was very catchy. It
like
included
specifically certain parts were going viral on TikTok. Everyone was using that sound.
The chorus was going viral on TikTok, but not the rest of the song. So people at first didn't even notice. They loved the song. They were vibing, you know? But then when they listened to the full song after it had gone viral on TikTok, they realized that there's a line that's a little that can be interpreted in different ways.
That could be problematic.
It could be problematic. And that started the whole discourse and the whole scandal. And NGO lodged the complaint, and now they're sentenced to 2 years each. I feel like, but now we're not talking about it anymore.
Yeah, we're not. They're in prison. So, but there's also a sense of, oh, justice was served. It's case closed, which, honestly, it's just for me, it's a problem of, I feel like those two people, those two rappers specifically, were, because one of them came out later on and tried to clarify that he was not enticing, because that was the reason why one of the lyrics was so controversial, is that it was interpreted as him enticing adult men to sexually exploit minor girls, right? However, he later on came out and said that no, like what we were doing was denouncing these grown men who would go to high schools and try to pick up minor girls and whatnot.
Predators.
Yeah. And I feel like because A, he's not just any artist, he's a rapper, and B, like you said, a very specific kind of rapper, and C,
I would just like to point out that one of them is behind the word, the expression "Fashek just for people to realize how niche he is. That sentence, we hear it all the time, but we don't know who came up with it. Yeah. It's one of those guys.
Exactly. Like he is a very specific kind of person. And I feel like that kind of person is very vulnerable to stereotypes. One of them also has a criminal record, so that kind of like adds to the gravity of what's going on. But I feel like it's mostly that, is that there was this stereotype built around these people, so that even when they came out to explain what the song was about, they were not believed.
People didn't even want to listen.
Yeah.
That's what happens with this manufactured outrage. You see something, you react to it. You see a lot of people reacting to it the same way you are reacting to it. And that is it. It stops right there. We don't really push the conversation further. Why are you reacting this way? And do you think that maybe you can see the issue from a different perspective?
Mhm.
Even when the person who was involved tried to explain to people, they didn't want to listen.
Yeah. I
It
feel
was
like when
all-
it comes to controversies regarding artists today, most of those artists just so happen to be rap artists. And it just leads me to believe sometimes that it's a genre that still isn't fully fully free of certain almost archaic ideas about what being a rapper entails at
This
times.
also relates to what you were talking about earlier about the generational gap and the divide. Rap is a very young people genre. We use modern elements in it. We don't use the same music types that that our parents or grandparents listened to. It's very quote unquote westernized. So it's looked at as this, oh, look at the young people. Is this what the youth is up to now?
Yeah, I feel like it's not just the fact that it is westernized and a little bit more modern or whatnot, or it doesn't have any traditional elements to it per se. I also think that it's because of an overall sort of rap idea that the older generation has of the genre, which entails drugs, alcohol, promiscuity, profanity.
Which is quite hilarious considering some of the Chevy songs that we
all
know.
We all know.
We know. If you know, you know.
Which you do.
Which you do.
You know. So yes, that is definitely a factor. The age, the sort of generational differences and whatnot. But I still think that it's also because the genre as a whole is looked down upon. I mean, we are seeing obviously more and more acceptance of rappers, some who have made it to the top of the game, not just in the country.
We have a rap talent show airing on national television.
Exactly. Right? And with two rappers one of whom is very celebrated for being like a true hip hop artist, like old school and whatnot. And the other is breaking every single number musically, not just in rap music, but musically
in Morocco,
in the region, which is, I mean, obviously people like it. And even some of these biggest rappers were also involved in controversies concerning public decency and what you should or shouldn't say in public.
They were also the victim of the highly litigious nature of Moroccans online.
Yeah. Exactly. And none of these rappers have ever had any issues with authorities prior to people physically lodging official complaints. So authorities were responding to popular outrage, or at times even singular outrage. A singular complaint could make it seem as if the whole public is against. Exactly. It could make it seem
like the way rap music is going mainstream currently in Morocco, there's a bit of a spotlight on it. And because it's different, because it's new, because it's mostly for the younger generations, there will absolutely be a backlash. There's always a backlash. There's always pushback. And I feel like because of the internet, because of social media, it gets amplified to a whole new dimension that leads to these lawsuits, to this conflict between the younger generation and the older generation that could have been discussed more openly and in more without involving the legal side of it and the judicial side of it. But because we're online, because of the internet, because of social media, that's the voices that are amplified. Those are the voices that are heard and that are amplified, and they feed into this conflict. They feed into this controversy. It's like a snake eating its own tail. Just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger until it's no longer in the news cycle, until it's no longer interesting, until we get bored of it and we move on to the next thing.
We move on to the same problematic with different characters.
Yeah, with different characters.
So it's a never-ending cycle.
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, what really sort of annoys me, is that a word I can use? Annoys me is people who complain about these things, they're always mentioning easily impressionable children and teens. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have kids in this day and age, They're not safe. You're going to have
They're
to
on the
still
internet.
parents, they have access to the internet. They see things, not just what's happening in Morocco or in Gaza or in the big cities. They could see what's happening in the US, in Compton. They know what's going on in Compton.
It's literally the age-old question. Before it was television, and then before that it was books. Every time there's a new form of media, there's a new form of communication that the younger generations are more savvy in, more savvy than their parents in. There is this outrage, there's this controversy. Won't you think of the children?
Yeah.
You need to think of your children.
Exactly. I mean, I totally understand and I empathize so much with current parents because I know it's
not easy.
It's not easy, and God help you all. But at the end of the day, I don't think that that's what's going to influence your child if you are present in
Exactly.
his consumption of these things, right? I mean, I feel like you yourself, if you're a young parent in your 30s, I'm sure that you also worried your parents because of media that you consumed, and you turned out fine, I'm guessing. So it should be okay. I do think that people are pretty much on the same page when it comes to what's okay and what isn't. Where they differ is it okay to film yourself doing that or not?
Yeah. No, this is very interesting. I saw research that was done by the University of California, UCLA, where they brought together people from different political affiliations. And we know in the US, it's even more divided, more polarized, especially
and
online.
Very partisan as well.
Bipartisan, very partisan. And they brought together people from different political affiliations for them to discuss certain political issues. And prior to the discussions, everybody involved anticipated that they would be difficult, that it would not be easy to talk to the other side. But when they actually put them together physically in one room and they started discussing, more often than not, they were agreeing on a lot of things. The discussions were civil, they were normal and easy, even if people are disagreeing. So this also brings back the point of the amplification of
differences.
Exactly, of differences and of outrage because of differences and how we tend to perceive things that are different online. Sometimes there's something that you wouldn't even care about if you hear it in the street or if a friend says to you. But if you see it on a tweet or on someone's story being published and shared online, you feel this outrage that is absolutely manufactured, as we've been saying. So I feel like people need to log off a little.
People definitely need to stay away from, or like do like a social media cleanse or something, right? Like, or an outrage cleanse. Just do not interact.
Or just be more mindful and aware of what you're looking at on social media. I find myself blocking a lot of things because I know I'm sensitive to them. I know that they trigger that outrage in me. So instead of when I feel that outrage, instead of commenting or sharing or getting into a fight, I just mute or block.
You do not feed the beast.
Exactly. Like, be more mindful, be more aware of what you're consuming, how you're consuming it, and how you're interacting with what's coming up on your timeline or on your feed.
Yes, mindfulness is a great solution to this issue because I feel like people practice restraint in real life, but they kind of get a little too...
Get carried away online.
They definitely get carried away. We all do when we're online and we see something that kind of like moves us in a way, whether positive or negative. I mean, the whole platforms are engineered for that. So it does take a little bit more effort, but nothing that we can't handle.
So until then, I guess we're just going to have to wait and see how it's going to go, how the Nicki Minaj show is going to play out. And let us know in the comments if you plan on going to see Nicki Minaj.
That's all. Thank you so much for tuning in to Hespress English's first podcast episode of Spill the Tea. Until next time.